Welcome to What Self-Care Looks Like. I'm your host, Brittany Elliott. It may be hard to hear, but self-care is not spa days, a weekend getaway, or brunch with your bestie. True self-care is the practice of protecting your well-being and happiness, and it lives within your daily routine. I'm a self-care and mom life coach here to help you prioritize your needs and practice self-care in a meaningful way so you can reclaim joy in your motherhood experience. Let's get back to you. Hey, welcome back to What Self-Care Looks Like. I am your host, Brittany Elliott, and my mission is to help you prioritize your needs and practice self-care in a meaningful way so that you can reclaim joy in the motherhood experience. Outside of hosting the show, I am the author of the book, What Self-Care Looks Like, and I'm also the creator of the Mental Load Reset, which is a workshop and mental load audit tool to help you kind of organize all the chaos that goes on in your mind. That is available for just $15 at my website, backtoyou5.com/mom. So today we are going to talk about being the default parent. I'm going to talk about it from two different perspectives because you can be the default parent or more so be the preferred parent for your children. So maybe your child prefers you to make their breakfast or do their bath time or to do bedtime routine, read their stories. You can be the default parent in that respect. And you could also be the default parent, as in you are the default caregiver, you are the default home runner, you are the default mental load carrier. And oftentimes, when you are the default parent in that respect, that is when you start to feel overwhelmed, frustrated, and resentful. So we're going to talk about both of those today, and hopefully I can give you a few ways to curb that a bit or to step into your power if that is something you're able to do through your default parenting. Hey, it's Brittany here, your host of the show, and I'd like to invite you to grab your copy of my book, What Self-Care Looks Like. It's the roadmap for working moms who want to prioritize their self-care and rediscover the joy in their motherhood experience. It's a must-read for any mom who has felt lost, unseen, or unsure along her motherhood journey. Buy it today at www.whatselfcarelooks.com. Okay, so first, let's talk about if you are the default parent in terms of your children prefer you over the other parent. You see this a lot in the toddler-ish stage. So I would say if your kids age 1, 2, 3, they may be preferring you, which is causing you to be like overwhelmed, but we can curb that by just pushing them onto the other parent. So for example, with my daughter, she tends to prefer that I do bedtime. She tends to prefer that I do a lot of things. And while she is allowed to have her own emotions, her own feelings, her own preferences, we don't let her preferences, drive the car. We don't let her do that. So we have certain days where I do bedtime routine and my husband does bedtime routine, because my husband and I work opposites, so that someone's always home during the day. So most of the week I am doing bedtime routine, but on his nights off, he does it. And that's how we trade off. So there will be those nights where she says, "Mom, can you read me a story?" And I tell her, "No, I'm not reading you a story tonight. I'm off from bedtime routine. It's daddy's night." And if she doesn't want to do that, then she can read herself a story or she goes to bed without one. And it's not a punishment thing for her. It's not like, "Oh, well, since you don't want your dad to do it, you don't get it." It's not that. It's just these are your options. Your options are he's doing it or you don't have to have anything, because you don't have to have anything. And she is 7 years old right now and she reads pretty well, so she can read to herself. So sometimes she just opts for him to lay in there with her and then she'll read the story. Now, our pediatrician, when our daughter was about 1 or 2, she definitely warned us about that. She said, if you notice that she's having a preference toward one parent or the other, you have to curb that by pushing the other parent on them. Or else, as they get older, when you try to do that and get them to be out of this settling for the unpreferred parent, they're going to start having tantrums and kind of flame out about it. So we did do that early on. And I will say, as someone who went through kind of like that loss of self, and I refer to it as a shattered sense of self in past episodes, I had a hard time finding my footing with that, because I was thinking, well, if she wants me, I should honor that. But because I wasn't letting my husband step in ways when he could, I was then I then needed to be accountable for my own overwhelm in those moments, because there were some things that he just couldn't do, like nursing her. He wasn't able to do that. So it wasn't like I'd be like, hey, can you just pop her up there and give her some milk? That wasn't something that worked out. But once I started pumping as well, there were times when I could go do something and he could feed her because I had pumped. So that's a more, tangible example of when you have to do one thing and they can do the other. But when it comes to your child just having a preference of the way that you do things, they have to get used to other people doing things and their way of doing things as they grow up anyway. I mean, my daughter, when in kindergarten, she had one teacher. In first grade, she had a different teacher with an entirely different style. She had to get used to that and get used to her day. In summertime, when she's at camp, she has to get used to her camp counselors. When she's at my mom's house, there's a certain way that they do things at my mom's house. At my mother-in-law's house, there's a certain way that they do things there. It's just when we are in our homes, I think that there becomes this extra pressure where we're trying to create this sanctuary inside of our home for our child. So we think, oh, it's nothing if they just prefer me to brush their teeth, or if they prefer me to make their lunch, or if they prefer me to do this and that. But it's a slippery slope where it goes from, oh, I feel so good that they want me to make their lunch, to I can't get anything done because they only prefer me to do every single thing. So my recommendation to you, if you are noticing that you are the preferred parent, then you need to start incorporating the other parent in, getting your child comfortable with being uncomfortable, not getting their preference. Hopefully I said that right, not backwards. Um, and then working through that accordingly, and then things tend to go fine. Because sometimes I'll be like at a park and I'll notice that maybe the mom is like carrying two kids, or it seems like the mom is just um like has a kid just hanging off of her, and then you can see like the dad doesn't seem like he's doing as much. And I could always tell that it's like, okay, in this moment, whatever's going on, the child is favoring the mom for that comfort or for whatever's going on. It's not that the dad's not capable, and it's not that he didn't try, but in this moment, that baby like wants their mama, and that's fine. In those situations, every situation doesn't account for that. So I guess for this part of the default parenting conversation, I just want to empower you to, say no at times, and know that your child will be okay, and trust yourself when you know that like this is a moment where like they really need their mama right now, where there's other times where it's like they just want their mama but they don't need to have me right now. So feel empowered by that. This other side of default parenting, which is like the icky side, if you will, is, and I'm going to read like a little definition from online. So, the default parent is the one who primarily handles the day to day tasks and responsibilities of raising children and managing a household, often taking on the majority of the mental load and the emotional load, aka the invisible labor, of providing for your child and anticipating their every need. This person is typically the first point of contact for children's needs, appointments, and school-related matters. They are often also the one who remembers all the small details and keeps the household running smoothly. This is the primary caregiver oftentimes. So the default parent is the one who is most often relied upon for childcare and household management. When it comes to the mental load, they carry the weight of planning, organizing, remembering, and problem solving that keeps the household running. They're the first point of contact for most child-related issues, appointments, and school communications. They often make the majority of decisions related to the children's needs and well-being, and they may also be responsible for managing the emotional needs of other family members, kids and spouse included. Now, there are some parts of that feel fine. You know, you're if something happens at school, school calls you. Doesn't really seem like a big deal. But if your spouse has your child at the store and they're shopping for something and your spouse is calling you every 5 to 10 minutes saying what size do they wear, what color shoes do they need, what's their favorite color, do they need a toothbrush, we're getting a little too much, too dependent. You shouldn't be parenting your spouse as well. And raising your child is your responsibility and your spouse's responsibility. And so understanding what size your child is in, what style of shoes they may be like, what shows they're into right now. Like, as a general rule, I feel that when your child's birthday is coming up, for example, people should be able to call either parent to ask, what could I get your child? Like, what kind of things does your child like? That should not just be on the mom. Both parents should know what your kids are interested in. You both should know what size they wear, because those are kind of like just basic facts about your kid. By default, with the school, for us, they were calling me. However, as I said, my husband and I work opposite schedules so that someone's always home during the day. So he's home during the day, so they should call him. But typically, the default parent is going to be the primary caregiver, which is typically going to be the mom. So the school was just falling into that and they were calling me. Even though I had my husband's phone number on there as the primary contact number, they called me. So I had to even train the school, like, don't call me because I can't come and get her and do anything to help quickly right now. It's my husband who's home, so call him. And so it was interesting because at the end of the school year, I picked her up from school a couple of times, and the person at pickup was like, who are you here to pick up? They're not used to seeing me. So the issue with being the default parent, if you are the default parent to your child, like your child comes to you first for things and that's just natural to them, that's their preference. Like, have you ever seen the video of, the child has been at home with the dad all day, not asking for anything. The dad has offered meals, kid doesn't want anything. And then as soon as the mom comes in and like, Mommy, I'm hungry. Mommy, can I do this? Mommy, can I do that? That's different. That's just a preference thing, a comfort thing. Sometimes that's just what kids do. If you're the default parent to your spouse, that's where we have a problem. That's when you're going to be overwhelmed, very frustrated, very resentful, very unsupported. You're going to be carrying most of the mental load. You're changing out the toothbrushes every time. You're the only one doing the laundry. You're the only one who knows the inventory of the groceries, all of those things. That is something that you have to work yourself out of, and also be aware of it and work through that with your spouse. And I know a lot of women feel that, hey, I married this person and they should know what they need to do when it comes to our household and when it comes to our children, and I should not have to train them up. And I would say, sure, but obviously they don't. Because if they knew and then they purposefully weren't doing it, we would be having a different conversation completely, right? Because you weren't going to marry someone or be in a relationship with someone who intentionally mistreats you and intentionally makes you feel unsupported. So we are going to assume positive intent, that they are not doing that on purpose, that they're actually doing something because they don't know any better. And that's a large reason why I created the mental load reset, because the mental load audit tool walks you through all of these different tasks and planning and to-do lists and thoughts that have to do with running the household and raising your children that you are thinking of almost without even thinking. Like, you just know. You just know that it needs handled, you know that it needs taken care of. And sometimes the other caregiver just doesn't have that. They're just not thinking of that. Like, my husband and I, we don't see the same things, we don't think the same way, we don't think about the same things, we don't approach parenting the same way. um I mean, I could say maybe there's a little bit of a blind spot there. I don't think so. I just think we're just different, and most people marry people who are different from them. So you may not both just be thinking of the same thing all the time, and that's not wrong about your partner. But it is very important to sit down and look at the mental load, because the mental load has kind of become like a trending word or a buzzword, and not everybody knows what that means. It's really all of the thinking, planning, all of the to-do lists that build up, that all come with constantly anticipating the needs of your children and knowing what needs done in your home as well. And when it's just you living alone in your home, the load is smaller. The load is a little bit different. Even if it's just you and your spouse, the load may be a little bit smaller. It's a little bit different. When you throw a kid in, it changes things up entirely, because kids are growing at a rapid pace. They outgrow things, they have needs, they need these wellness visits. When do you call the doctor? When does your insurance kick in to pay for this wellness check? Who is my insurance provider? All of these things. Like, I know right now we're in even benefits, what is it, open enrollment at work. And so I had to go back and look at my husband's benefits and like do the comparison again, which I do every year, to see like, okay, well, which one makes more sense? Which coverage is better? What does this mean if we switch to a different healthcare provider? How does that impact who we are able to see? I can probably guarantee that when open enrollment time comes, my husband's probably not thinking about that. He's just like, are we going with your insurance? Or are we going with my insurance? That's it. So we think differently. Um, so it's very important, if you feel that you are the default parent, in that your spouse just gets home from work, kicks their feet up, and is like, cool, what's for dinner? That's it. Then it's time to have a conversation, because they are not seeing the whole picture. And yes, it is your responsibility to help them see that. If you truly believe that you married somebody or you're partnered with someone who cares about your well-being, which I just want to assume that you chose somebody who cares about your well-being, that you are actively being in a relationship with someone who wants you to be happy and who doesn't want you to be overwhelmed or frustrated or resentful toward them. Now, if you do the mental load audit with them, you go through the tool together, and they're still like, yeah, I'm not doing this. I'm not trying to do this. You're on your own. Then that's just a different conversation. And I am not that type of coach. I am your self care and mom life coach. I do not deal with the ins and outs of relationships, but I definitely can refer some people. So if that ends up being the case in a conversation that you truly do want to have, um, inbox me. What is it? DM me on Instagram. I'm at back to you in 5 on there. And then my email address is Brittany at backtoyouin5.com. And then I could always refer you to like a licensed family therapist or something like that to talk through additional things. But I highly recommend starting with just do the mental load reset, do the mental load audit tool with them. It's only $15. Y'all can work through it together, or print out two, have them do one and you do one, because some of the questions that it asks on here, let me pull it because I have mine here. One of the things they say is who does it. There's one column of who does it. So cooking, meal planning, laundry, kitchen cleaning, kitchen inventory, clothes shopping. And it's who does it. Me, us, or them. So if you're seeing that most of these tasks, and there's 4 or 5 pages worth of them, if you're seeing most of them are you things when you are a married woman, a partnered woman, and most everything on here is you, then we know that we need to like right the ship with some of this stuff, because it's off balance. And some things may not matter as much all of the time, right? So on here is like, who replaces the toothbrushes all the time? Well, that's not something that's happening daily. It's a periodic thing. So that might not be a thing that's really bothering you. But if you're the only one who, changes the bedding, you might be like, hey, you need to start being mindful that the bedding needs changed out because I don't want to have to be the one doing this. Simple as that. You may not care so much that you are the person doing all the laundry, but maybe you don't like travel planning. I, I don't know. But I know that this put it in a lot of things in perspective for me as far as what was making me overwhelmed and what I was resentful about and why I was resentful. Why did it matter to me? Like, let's say I will use this, I am the person who always changes out the toothbrushes. And at some point I was like, why am I the only one changing all these toothbrushes? Now that I'm healed through self-care and I prioritize my needs, I really don't care because it's just something that's part of what I do. I did it before. If I'm changing out my toothbrush, I'm going to change out everybody's toothbrushes. So it's really not a big deal. But there may be something else like laundry used to be a point of contention for me. I hated, like, I felt like I was the only one doing laundry, and now, like, that's not the case. It's balanced. He actually does more of the laundry now. um so do that. Take a look at that. If you are the default parent as far as preference, then that's a little bit different. And you having your self-care routine where you're prioritizing your needs, practicing self-care, taking care of yourself, prioritizing your overall wellness, which is your social wellness, physical wellness, spiritual wellness, emotional wellness, and intellectual wellness. When you are prioritizing those things by focusing on one activity every day, that takes just 5 minutes or less to complete, that's going to focus on one of your wellness points, you are going to start feeling less overwhelmed by doing those things that come with just being the preferred parent, just your kid preferring you. And then you'll start to feel more comfortable saying, okay, I know you want mommy to do it, but daddy's doing it today. And y'all will just get into a new rhythm. If your spouse is, if you're the default parent to your spouse, that's the problem. And to really correct that issue, because it is a problem, you need to probably shine some light on your mental load to your partner. I know it seems very backwards and like I'm telling you to, hold them accountable by holding yourself accountable. But if you're the one having feelings about it and they don't seem to be having feelings about it and they are blind to your feelings about it, it is up to you to vocalize it, talk about it, get creative about ways that you've talked about it. I don't care if you say, last week we talked about it and he said he was going to change and then he still hasn't done it. Talk to him about it again, because we are going to assume that your partner, your spouse, your husband, your wife did not get it that time, and we're going to try something new. Okay, you have to do the work and try things, just like with your self-care routine. You may try waking up at 5 a.m. You don't like that. And then you're like, okay, well, let me try 5:15, and it works well. Nothing really changed. All we did was like approach it a little bit different 15 minutes later. Or you might like yoga this week, but then next week you're like, "Ugh, I'm hating this," and then you just switch. You just have to plug and play. This is your life. You have to find ways to live it and feel fulfilled through your life, and you have to prioritize your needs, and sometimes you have to get creative with that. So, being the default parent isn't necessarily the problem or a problem. Being the preferred parent can lead to some overwhelm if it gets unmanaged. Being the default parent can, to your kids, can cause some overwhelm as well. I can tell you 100%, if you feel that your spouse doesn't support you and they see you as the default parent and they feel like everything in the household is your responsibility and the kids are your responsibility and you're expected to go out and work full time and all of that, that is going to cause a breakdown in the relationship. And maybe they don't even feel that way. They're just acting as if they do because you feel like they are not participating actively in your lives. So let's try to take the feeling out of it and sit down and have a direct conversation, or say, honey, I want you to listen to this episode what self-care looks like, because I've been kind of feeling like this, and maybe you haven't had the words to say, hey, I'm feeling unsupported right now. I'm feeling like I'm the default parent. I feel like I'm carrying all the mental load. Can we look at this together? Just, do that. Try that first before we get online and bash our spouses and do things like that. So remember, you may be the preferred parent. We curb that by just pushing our child onto the other parent and getting them comfortable with being uncomfortable. Eventually, they're just gonna be like, okay, I have to do story time with them. And they're gonna deal with it or they're gonna not. That's fine. You being the default parent, if you don't want school calling you, if you don't want the doctor's office calling you to do the reminders, if you don't want the hair salon calling you, if you don't want anybody calling you to confirm anything about your child, give them your husband's number. No big deal. Then they can take you out of it. If you don't want your spouse, assuming you're the default parent, which I don't think anybody's spouse should assume that they are the default parent, then we do the work and try this approach. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe and share this episode with a mom who it can help. And until next time, I'll talk to you very, very soon. Thanks for listening to this episode. I hope you learned at least one thing you can implement into your daily routine. To connect with me, follow at Back to You in 5 on Instagram. If you're feeling generous, share this episode with a mom you know and subscribe to the show. I appreciate your support. Remember, motherhood is a journey, not a destination. Grow through it and enjoy the view.